and Court was this film. It's a film that is not only telling about a human experience, but also is doing it with an immense discipline. And as a filmmaker, I know how difficult that is. How I know the temptations that you have around. You know, I'm talking about the temptations of beauty, but also the fear of time. And I find that it was a film was not only tremendously powerful, but also brave in itself.
What was the scene that struck you the most? Was it the time when the screen just went blank?
Well, it's just cinema is not about scenes.
Yeah.
You know, it's just about a whole experience. The with the thing also something that was very important is that I was embarking in my own project, my first Mexican film in 17 years, the first one in Spanish in all this time, going back to my country and being confronted with a filmmaker embracing his own culture and wanted to talk about a universal experience from the standpoint of a very particular experience. And and if you add to that is that his rigor and his approach was very, it was not unlike the approach that I wanted to take. So it was something that just worked in a very, very, very organic way for me.
Alfonso, who was your mentor?
In life?
Back in the day.
Yeah, no, that
Imaginary,
I've been very lucky that to have throughout the years different mentors. I mean, in cinema and probably in other things. But some people you don't know, you will never know. You know, it's,
Maybe, try.
yeah, no, there was this character who used to do a lot of different creative. It was Mexico in the 70s, so it was pretty much most of the industry or creative industry was taken either commercials or the other part was controlled completely by the government. And he worked in the context of different government offices, doing editorials and publishing books and that kind of stuff. And he was in charge to convey, for instance, the achievement of the politician in turn. And he started because he was like he was really what he wanted to be, I guess, is a filmmaker. So he would turn them into little documentaries, or if he was told they had to present like this. At that time, they would use only slides and stuff, and they said, "Okay, slides about pollution and traffic." And he says, "Okay, I want to do a film, and he will do a fictional film involving, you know, like a comedy, a comedian and stuff."
Long feature or short?
Well, it's 45 minutes is one, another one was 20 minutes, and some others. I mean, there were different lengths, and not much budget, and I started. He embraced me since I was maybe 14, and I was just around. You know, sometimes just at the very beginning, just watching and following around, and eventually, like when I was maybe 15, he embraced me to be his assistant because of the budgets and his philosophy of film. He had a little 16mm camera, and he would do everything on his own. So it was and then he brought me along, and it was a two-person team. And what I really appreciate and thank him is that I really knew my country through my work with him, because we work we work on documentaries about indigenous education, so education to the Indian communities in Mexico, and so we will travel to very remote places in the country, shooting all these communities. Some of them that were so far away from the reality that I knew. So, it was my first one, and from then on, I got other filmmakers. Until I was, pretty much until I found my next mentor. That is until when I was maybe 18.
Yeah.
And then I got a different mentor, who was a sound mixer, and then I got another one as a filmmaker, Jose Luis Garcia Gras, and then I had another one called Luis Mandoki, that's a filmmaker who ended up doing films in Hollywood, and so on. It's a constant process. Then in Hollywood, Sidney Pollack was one. And then in many ways my relationship with Guillermo and Alejandro is, we have a mentor-disciple relationship, the three of us, that goes in circles.
Kind of collective in a way.
Yeah.
And now my new mentor is this man.
we understand that. It was a shaman. Magician.
Alfonso, why are you going back to Mexico? What prompted you to go back to Mexico?
I think that, I'm not going to talk about my movie now.
Okay.
May I ask a question to Chaitanya? Hi, Chaitanya. And John Emilio Mazzoni from Italy. And I wanted to ask you, how would you describe your movie making? What makes you make movies? And how do you relate your making movies to Alfonso's?
Ever since I was a child, I was very interested in telling stories, but for me, the culture I come from, it was more about theater and like the mainstream, like Indian movies. That's all I was exposed to. It was by the time I was 18, 19 is when I kind of decided that films is what I want to do. It was also the time when I discovered world cinema. And why I think it's a kind of an ailment. I always call it a disease. Why I want to, because it's very hard. Every time I'm doing it, I promise myself that this is not worth it. But then you also can't, live without doing it in a way. I've just made one feature, but I've done theater, I've done short films and documentaries. It's always equally hard.
Where theater falls in this process?
I grew up
It was before 18. That
Oh
you
yeah,
were
when I
doing-
was a child, my family would take me to the theater always to watch plays.
Marathi
and stuff
theatre
like that.
or-
Marathi theater and local theater, and
Right.
in my college I did inter-college theater. I grew up wanting to be an actor when I was a child, because it's the most immediate form of expression in a way. And it's very interesting to you ask me how I related to Alfonso's. The thing is. Cinema runs in his blood, his assimilation of cinema. I'd probably take a few lifetimes or a few decades to get there, because also because it's all about the medium, right? For me, I'm still discovering the medium, understanding the medium. So I'm at a much more nascent stage, in that. And he has, from whatever I hear from him and people, he's grown up in that environment. So for me, it's a very, very inspiring process to because you spend time with someone like him, it changes your eye, the way you look at things, and it's all about that sensitization, right? So it's changed me in that way. And of course there are similarities in I think he always mentions that he started off in Mexico making those kind of films with limited resources, so there's that similarity. But in terms of filmmaking, I think his process is very, very sort of much more closer to understanding film language and the form than it's mine. And I tell him that always, that I come from a more narrative inclined, and then the medium is something that we are grasping with still, somebody like me. So which is why this
I disagree, but anyway, I disagree with you in that sense. I think that your grasp of language is as mature as any other peer of my generation that I respect.
And it's a given if you've been attending the event that he's very generous, extremely generous. So.
You know that that also I'm horribly honest about certain
But when you say it was Friday or Saturday, Friday, when you say that when you discover his short movie, correct?
Well, it's not a
No,
short
it's
movie.
not.
It's a feature film.
Okay. I didn't know. But you were shocked because it was really speaking with your own project with Roma.
Yeah, no, because if you have to see the film and then to see Roma to understand, in the sense that he took some certain commitments in terms of language. Maybe one day I learned that says, oh shoot, he didn't know what he was doing, and he was just
It was just a fluke. Yes.
yeah,
yes.
and then he was all,
Yeah.
no, it's very clear that that what he was doing and in the context that he was doing, it was just the stuff that I was already prepping. I was already kind of in the beginning of pre-production, and so there's.
What I also probably meant to say, he's like extremely self-reliant as a filmmaker. Like he knows everything about everything, which is very awe-inspiring. Talk about sound, you talk about lighting, you talk about and Roma in that case, he's done everything on Roma, like from directing to shooting it to producing it to writing. It's kind of overwhelming.
And this imagine is very important for you as well, because I imagine that you don't have all these means around this grasp of the
Yes.
technical grasp. I think it's very important for you as well, because I think when you do movies in India, you don't have all this technical.
It's not just technical.
You have to
I
take
think it's an
care of
artistic-
everything,
I think
right?
It's an artistic grasp of
Of
the
the-
medium.
yes.
Because you can see the foundation
Yes, it's both, yeah.
in terms of his understanding of paintings, his understanding of music, and all the other art forms. And I always ask him, like, Maestro, how? And he's like, you see all this white hair? That's it.
No, because it's true. I mean, it's just that he's very impatient in the sense that what he says, but how? And says, man, look how old you are, how old I am. Because I happen to be walking around the pad a little longer, and throughout the matter, and I said it, and it's not generosity. It's I'm being honest about your work and my work. Your first film, in terms of understanding of language, is way more advanced to anything I could have in terms of understanding got until my fourth film. Is and I'm not saying which one is better or worse or whatever. It's just in terms of understanding. You already have that, so the rest is just about doing. And considering that you went to shoot your film without having been in a set before, I survived. I was a blue collar of cinema. I did every single position, and that was actually my means of survival. I had a kid when I was very young, and that was my job. I needed that job to survive, and so that also forces you to learn about certain disciplines. But the fact is, in your first film, it's just compare your man. One day you see my first film.
I've seen your first film, man.
Okay, then you get it now.
I wanted to ask you, Alan Prada, Vogue Italia. We heard how you met, how it started, everything. Is there a closing point? I mean, not in a personal point of view, but in this process, this is a limited process also. I mean, this program. Can you imagine a closing point, or
Can't
you
wait.
don't? You can't wait?
No. This no. I mean, I don't know from his standpoint. From my standpoint, is I have a new friend. I have a friend. I have and it's someone I want to. I hope in the future we can keep on sharing our projects. And collaborating the way that I do with filmmakers that are my friends and that I admire, Alejandro, Guillermo, Pavel Pawlowski, different people that we are just, that we trust and we admire their work, and we want to be part of their work, and you want them to be part of your work. So that's for me. Maybe he's just ready to run away.
Tonight I'm just
No,
watching.
but I mean, I
my
wasn't
time.
talking, of course, on a personal point of view, but I mean, maybe in what you learned or.
Yeah, no, the thing is, so just to give you an example, I am going back to London next month. You know, the program's over. You know, work has started on my new film that I want to shoot, and this it's going to get crazy when I will be in London. But it's not about an official.
Are you shooting it in India?
In India, but you know, it's such an honor to be in the same room when he will be doing the sound mix, and it will be the kind of education that money can't buy you. You know, so it's not about similarly, just like 2 weeks ago, out of his own volition, he had told me, he read the script, he's like, hey, you know what, I will put you in touch with somebody, some important person. And I didn't pester him, I never followed up, but he wrote that email, you know, and he didn't have to. And we are almost at the end of his thing, so it's you know, it shows the kind of, you know, it's this is not a part of the program for him to write to real people who don't exist in this bubble of the program, and to put his name out there, you know, and to introduce me to. So it's you know, I am kind of pretty sure, and I hope I'm not wrong about this, that this will go on. And you probably
the restraining order is coming.
Deleting those emails. No, and I think probably if anybody who attended the event, you know, you could probably make that out that you know, he really is very friendly that way, in a very sincere way. So I'm very grateful. Yeah. And I mean, I went backstage after that event, and I was like, "You're so fatherly. Thank you."
No, but then the thing is, I have to say, it's like, my daughter would not forgive me if I don't see him again. You know, it's like for my daughter, he's the coolest dude she has ever met. You know?
No, and also, so the thing is, and this is something that's been going on in my head over this weekend, is that yes, it's very nice that he said, you know, such nice stuff about my work, but it's also now I feel a responsibility to actually be good, you know. And you, like, there is this thing where you're hanging out with all these masters in a room, and they are generous enough to put you on the same level, but you're like, now you have to go back and put in work, and I mean not for years, I mean for decades. To do justice to their encouragement and their, so it's kind of also a bit unnerving, you know, in a way. It's a responsibility that you feel now. Yeah.
You have to show your next movie to him first.
Yes, but I see this also
the judgment.
I don't have a question. I don't have a question about this guy.
No, it's a longer process. It's not about one movie, and it's how I feel about this program. You know, if you ask me how was this program for you, I think that what I learned from Alfonso, I will be processing it for years. You probably have to ask me 10 years or 15 years down the line, how it changed me or my process.
You know, my daughter actually asked me, "Do you think that Chaitanya is going to be a successful director?" And I said, "He is." You know, I said, "He is." I said, and by the way, I don't know if he's going to be a famous director, you know, or that, because that has nothing to do with cinema. You know, that has to do way more with media and many other things. But that he's a great director and he will keep on being a great director, I have no question about it. And also, as I said, and it doesn't matter. I mean, because a lot of these people are so famous, and these films that are so famous, in 15 years, a lot of them nobody knows about. And some films and filmmakers that were so obscure, 30 years later they resurface and they are become classics. You know, so this whole thing of being famous or great is that only time decides. And I'm certain that time is going to be very generous with Chaitanya. And the present as well, but regardless of that, yeah.
Is it very difficult to have films. I mean, I'm sorry for my ignorance. I know very little about Indian movies, but we know a lot about the Bollywood movies, of course, because we've heard about them. We know very little about the rest of the movie making in India. It is very difficult to have movies like yours distributed in India.
Well, the short answer is yes.
Yes.
It's a heroic task to do what he did. What he did, the way he did it,
Yeah.
with the ambition that he did it, and it is almost unthinkable.
It was, yes, in the sense it was difficult. I don't know about heroic, but now here's the interesting part. Now that I meet Alfonso, he's pushing me even further. Even further.
You have to know that
it's crazy.
to do a film like what he did, usually they would have a budget this big, and he was the madman who got a bigger budget, a way bigger budget than any other film like that,
That is a kind of movie. Yeah.
and just because he knew what he needed, he knew what he wanted, and ultimately he believed in what he was doing. And that is great. That talks about, and it's not arrogance. And I'm sure you were accused of arrogance by a lot of fronts. At that time, it's not about arrogance. It's about having a certainty and an intuitive understanding of what you did. So no matter if you said, "Oh yes, I didn't know what I was doing" and stuff, you would have just agreed to do it with any other budget, and you knew that you needed that budget.
Yeah, no, but I am actually, it's different while I'm working, but otherwise in life I'm coward in that sense. I'm a big goose, and he's like, why not go further, why not? And for him it's not a question. It's like, why not? So this new film is going to be in that sense very influenced by his words and his attitude, because he's in not only in like encouraging words, kind of in very practical, real. Like he's sending out emails for me, which is it's incredibly nice of him, and he's giving me real advice.
Because I understand also, because there's something that's a background I relate a lot. When I was trying to make films, Mexico was living a very insulated reality. Not only in terms of film, politically, pretty much it was a dictatorship. Disguising whatever. For him to do the kind of films that he does in the context of India is as insulating, because also there's not, because of the perception that all we have about India is Bollywood. There's little platform for those Indian films that are more specialized. So there's a sense of insulation, and I understand that, and I used to have that. Like feeling in Mexico, and also I had help of friends like Luis Mandoki, this guy who became a mentor, who started dragging me out of that, saying, okay, there's a universe around, there's a world, and there's a world of collaborators as well, to do your job, your work.
Other people like you.
There are other platforms to jump into. Then
you have to know them. Yeah.
And I feel, and I know that all of this is just that I'm not doing that to say be less Indian. It's just I know that certain collaborations, they just help you elevate your own work.
Of course. Yes.
And
Could you tell us things when you bounced the script of him? What are a couple of things specifically that you remember that was interesting by way of his feedback to your script for Roma?
and cannot talk about that.
Okay.
But I would
maybe
like
yeah, please.
Sorry, I would like
Yeah,
to know. I was like to add to what he was saying, and this is something I'm never going to forget. I mean, we were having dinner once, and I was like, "Here's a man who's walked through the fire 8 times or 7 times more than I am, and with much crazier projects." And I asked him, "How do you do it?" Because, in the sense, where do you find the emotional strength to do this? And and his attitude is so beautifully optimistic. I will never forget those words. He probably doesn't even remember he said this, but he said, yes, it's brutal, but it's the best kind of brutal.
Yes.
Every time I talk to him about any problem, he'll be like, yes, but it'll be beautiful. So that is also like a life lesson to learn for somebody who's been through this process, so many times and still has this kind of energy and passion. So, and then you are like, okay, then what am I complaining about? Let's just cut that part out, so.
This was the last word, a nice last word. So maybe we can change if you want to meet another pair.
Chaitanya, just last question. You said that it changed your eye, working with him. Do you want to elaborate on that just quickly?
It's just about being sensitized to different facets of the film medium.
Right.
Like I've learned so much about cinematography by being on this set, even by going to the grading process, or now when I go to the sound mix, I'm sure that it's going to make me a lot more sensitized to to sound, and because film is a amalgamation of so many different art forms in that sense. So that's